The Dauntless. One of the major perks to both being a major politician and dating a major politician is that you could time your paperwork hours to match. A literal mountain of authorization, approval, and information could be much more comfortably dealt with when you have a loved one sitting on your lap and dealing with her own. Bah, Nikti mutters as she reads through a report. Something wrong? Two of the smaller tribes on Brule are doing a merge war. The collateral is going to be stupid and big as they're doing this in the dry season. The forest might catch on fire. Any way to persuade them to at least move the fight onto concrete? It has a considerably higher combustion point, Admiral Cistern remarks as he goes over the safety requirements of the space stations, which are considerably more lax than even the most slapdash pirate mess that he's found evidence of. Maybe, actually, that's not a bad idea. If we can rush construction, then there may be a way to make an official battlefield that's clear of both civilians and anything else that might become collateral damage. She leans up and kisses him on the underside of the jaw. Thank you. You're quite welcome. Having someone be with makes even the most annoying parts of the job a pleasure, Admiral Cistern remarks before leaning down to kiss her on the top of the head. She lets out a sigh of contentment. Sir? Philip's voice comes out of the speaker. The man has a direct communication. The phone doesn't ring, the phone doesn't pause. If Sir Philip wants to talk, then he talks. I'm here with Ambassador Tal. What is it, Philip? Admiral Cistern asks. Just an update to your first major concern, Sir Philip remarks. There are security issues? My apologies, I should have spoken more clearly. Your first non-urgent major concern, Sir Philip clarifies. Non-urgent and major concern should not go together. If it's a major concern, is it not, by some definition, urgent? Nikti asks, and Admiral Cistern chuckles. When you're venturing into a great unknown, there are many major concerns, so we had to be a bit more stingy with the title urgent. Admiral Cistern explains. Non-urgent means no perceived long or short-term danger, which means that one of my soldiers has started interacting with advanced technology but is not in harm's way. Quite the opposite, sir. Lieutenant Commander Jeremiah Escobar Bridger has entered into what promises to be a very lucrative partnership with a custom cloner who owns a boutique for such biological products. Sir Philip explains. I see. To what end? He's a very wise man and has apparently held an archive of genetic sequences to numerous tamed animals from Earth. We will shortly be able to have a fresh taste of home that wasn't carefully kept from freezer burn. Sir Philip notes. You're eager. Admiral Cistern notes. I'm somewhat hungry, sir. Sir Philip confesses. However, the bulk of his information was on breeds of pets, dogs, cats, numerous breeds of parrot and fish, even farm animals such as horses, goats, sheep, and cows. A taste of home indeed. Be sure to send me the address of this cloner. I'll disperse it among the ships so that the men can get a little something to relieve the homesickness, Admiral Cistern says. Oh, so those lopin-looking creatures that you and your sons would play with? Ambassador Tal asks, as she remembers the photos that Admiral Cistern had shared with her. Yes, that is a dog, Admiral Cistern says. I'm fairly certain I've already told you that. I was a little focused on how handsome those boys were. If they weren't safely hidden in cruel space, they'd be chased by entire armies worth of desperate bachelorettes. Ambassador Tal remarks, and Admiral Cistern chuckles. Would you care for my overview of cloning technology now or later? Sir Philip asks. Now would be good unless Ambassador Tal has any protests. None at all, in fact. I'm willing to clear up a few things. My grandmother was a maintenance professional in a large cloning conglomeration that was rife with scandal. Nikti notes, and Admiral Cistern nods. Very good then. Cloning technology is fairly advanced but has several substantial limitations. The primary use of this technology is medical and dietary. The medical uses are obvious for those who have some form of reluctance to use restorative comas. The dietary are for those, particularly of a carnivorous disposition, to eat meat without a sensation of guilt that an animal has died for one's meal. Sir Philip explains and pauses, as if he can sense the nearly spoken question that Admiral Cistern is burning to ask but isn't letting out. "I see. What are the limitations of cloning technology?" Admiral Cistern asks. The first major limitation is legality. Due to many dramatic incidents, there are few, if any, places in the galaxy that condones cloning a full adult. The husband farm and buy a boyfriend incidents are stellar examples of such. Sir Philip begins and Nicti gives off a slight laugh. "I thought you'd find that amusing. If the joke may be explained. It's not funny, but more ironic? Black comedy?" Both companies were based on space stations, and both of them were destroyed in ways relating to stars. Both companies slowly cloned the same person over and over again and used a mental imprint to let them have all the memories they'd need. Then they were sold as slaves. In the husband farm, one of them got loose and proved just how clever they all were by waking up as many others as possible and effectively committing mass suicide by maneuvering the station into its nearest star. All in all, it was a stellar example as to why cloning like that is a very bad idea, to say the least. "And the second example?" Admiral Cistern asks, somewhat dreading the answer. "They used a Deep Crag Nagasha teenager as the template. The entire species is naturally attuned to axiom use on a large scale, and the memory implants included a basic but broad field of study. Several of them working together achieved nuclear fusion, and the station was reduced to shrapnel in an explosion that created an extremely short-lived star." Ambassador Tal states this time, and he lets out a deep breath in consideration. "So cloning and neural implanting have been made massively illegal. What about mass cloning?" The intricacies of cloning makes it so that there's very quickly a high level of degradation and genetic drift in excessively large batches. Ordinarily, it's easy enough to compensate for, but the galaxy favoring women means that there are issues cloning men as well. Beyond the going berserk when they realize that they were created solely to be a commodity, Admiral Cistern asks somewhat testily. "Actually, that one's universal. There isn't a single species, gender, or people that take that fact well. Clone armies and colonists do okay, but you get some wild hairstyles and tattoos and piercings very quickly. People like being themselves and don't react well to being told that they've got a number and not a name." Ambassador Tal remarks, and Admiral Cistern considers. "I see. What about accelerated aging and training? How about standard clones from birth?" Standard clones are effectively the twin of the original, nothing more or less, and are regarded as such legally if they're not regarded as the child of the original. Some men go out of their ways to have clones of themselves so they have a son to teach and spend time with. Sir Philip explains before the sound of a turning page can be heard. Is he reading this out of a book? Or perhaps taking notes for some inscrutable reason? He may even be giving this report while observing a hostile or spying on a general location. "And accelerated aging," Admiral Cistern presses. "Unfortunately, it's nothing but a tragedy all around. The processes to cause rapid aging are relatively simple to start, but difficult to nigh on impossible to stop, and to make matters worse, it's exacerbated by healing comas, and the comas are the only way to turn back the clock, so to speak. Eventually, things get to the point of the clone being required to spend the entirety of their lives in the coma or die within mere minutes." Philip answers, and there's some quick scribbling. "Sir Philip, are we interrupting something?" Admiral Cistern asks, and the old spy clucks his tongue of all things. "Not at all, sir. Just a wonderful day out, writing a little poetry and watching the world go by." Sir Philip, the most definitely spying on somebody, states in a chipper tone, Incidentally, I'm certain you can come up with the dangers of the final method of common cloning, which entails raising the child from birth and, oh dear, excuse me, something's come up. With the sound of something moving fast, the call turns off, and Nikti and Admiral Cistern share a look. Is he going to be all right? He's very skilled, but very old. That just means he's replaced energy with pragmatism. I'm not sure there's anything on the planet or above it that can actually match the man. I'm including the battleships and defense platforms, by the way, Admiral Cistern says confidently. Well, I did see him in action during the charity ball. The man seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. As I said, there's unlikely to be anything on or above this world that can match him. Surely you could match him in your own way, Nikta remarks, and he chuckles. He's a field agent. I'm a commanding officer. Our skills are very different. Admiral Cistern remarks. And those other two? Which other two? Admiral Cistern asks. Agents Alpha and Omega. Those are two single trooper armies. You don't fight them, you die against them. I'm only calling on them if I want one of the major ships in orbit to crash into the planet or one of the spires to collapse. Either that or if I want a world government completely torn apart. Wow. So what do they do most of the time? Generally, they're keeping their skills sharp and forcing random platoons into joining in. Other than that, they're under orders to stay as bored as they can stand to hopefully avoid interplanetary incidents. Surely it's not that bad. The more skilled a soldier gets, the less they like sitting on their hands and doing nothing. There's only so much that can be done on the ship, but exporting the majority of the Dauntless's crew to outside the ship is just asking for trouble. So we've been rotating people in and out, and those two I'm keeping close. Oh, come on. Some of the soldiers I've all but cut loose have conquered a world in one scenario. Another set have all but cornered the black market on the station Ashen Ducks. The gentlemen on Octaron Spin have started a weapons production factory and begun exportation. One branch of the EFL has reached 100% pregnancy ratio on their ship, meaning there's going to be a lot of newborn Lutrin soon. Another has convinced their crew that smuggling rare animals from world to world is more lucrative than most piracy. One group has progressed to stealing entire ships, chopping them for parts and reselling them en masse as a cover for the sheer amount of alcohol they've been selling. Oh my goodness, is it just your boys or your whole species that's that energetic? I'm not sure how long Brule would survive with an entire city's worth of such men bouncing around. Yes and no. The military training brings out everything it can in our men. It gives them the strength and confidence to try anything at least once. If it doesn't kill them, then they're just encouraged to try again, and seeing as how we're a stubborn bunch for staying alive. Well, it leads to crazy places. I wasn't talking about damage. I can imagine that in a few months or even weeks some young troublemaker will see if he can seduce his way into changing the name of my world. I'd imagine he'd even make a good go at it. That's all we need, Planet Bob. Admiral Cistern jokes before snorting. Better than Planet Richard. Otherwise the jokes would never end. Why's Richard so funny? It's often shortened to Dick, which can be slang for the penis in the English language. Oh, she exclaims, going still, then after a few moments breaks down in helpless giggles as the idea becomes funnier and funnier the more she thinks about it. It's not that funny. Admiral Cistern chides the giggling Goby, but goes unheard.